Dressing.
Oh, French dressing.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good.
I'm AJ Jacobs, and my current obsession is puzzles. And that has given birth to my podcast, The Puzzler.
Something about Mary Poppins?
Exactly.
This is fun.
You can get your daily puzzle nuggets delivered straight to your ears. Listen to The Puzzler every day on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Criminalia podcast. I'm Maria Tremarchi.
And I'm Holly Fry. Together, we invite you into the dark and winding corridors of historical true crime.
Each season, we explore a new theme, from poisoners to art thieves.
We uncover the secrets of history's most interesting figures, from legal injustices to body snatching.
And tune in at the end of each episode as we indulge in cocktails and mocktails inspired by each story.
Listen to Criminalia on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It was big news. I mean, white girl gets murdered, found in a cemetery. Big news.
A long investigation stalls until someone changes their story.
I saw the whole thing that happened.
An arrest, trial, and conviction soon follow.
He did not kill her. There's no way.
Is the real killer rightly behind bars or still walking free?
Did you kill her?
Listen to The Real Killer, Season 3, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mark Seal.
And I'm Nathan King.
This is Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli.
The 5 families did not want us to shoot that picture.
This podcast is based on my co-host Mark Seal's best-selling book of the same title. Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli features new and archival interviews with Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Evans, James Caan, Talia Shire, and many others.
Yes, that was a real horse's head.
Listen and subscribe to Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Previously on Obscurum, Invasion of the Drones.
They will actually, the orbs flash their lights in beat with the music. They turn red, they become violent. I mean, they'll come at you real hard.
I've watched a lot of UFO videos where you can hear the people who are taking the video of the UFO. You can hear them conversing on the audio track. They and the people around them are literally negotiating the meaning of what they're seeing.
Rod kind of told me that he had been diagnosed with cancer, and he said it wasn't looking good.
He did have a tumor. He had that drone encounter that he was talking about at that time. That was totally gone. So can I explain that medically? No, I cannot.
It feels like you're driving up to that building in Stranger Things where they're doing all those tests. There's this big metal door with concrete walls that are like 20 foot high.
Hello?
And there's cameras kind of all over the place here. Peering in the direction of a tunnel on the side of a hill in the middle of nowhere, I prepared to go meters underground into a Cold War-era room that once housed a nuclear warhead, estimated to be 20 times stronger than the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima, to see if my hunch was true. Chapter 15, Buried in Plain Sight. I slowly walked up to the entrance of an intercontinental ballistic missile silo. My goal was to see how expansive these installations were, and ultimately, if a similar space would be able to conceal many aircraft. A quick Google search revealed these sites and the bombs locked inside of them were first built during the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 1960s and scattered throughout the Great Plains, sometimes right next to farms. The military sold a few silos that weren't in use. I tracked one down that belonged to Don and Char's Wanitzer. They'd bought an abandoned or decommissioned missile site near Kimball, Nebraska. I convinced them to take me around the property.
What is this right here?
Now this is the door that would open and they would back the missile in. So the missile bay is right behind this 47-ton door. Go ahead, follow Don.
We entered the structure through a large hole covered by metal mesh curtains. There was a long tube with lights illuminating a walkway. 20 to 30 yards in, I saw a second hall to the right. It felt like a narrower, darker version of a New York subway station, and not the type of place I'd spend a lot of time.
The crew was down that tunnel where the red phone and the launch buttons were. The missile was in a building over here. The purpose of the tunnel was to separate the two buildings so the crew wouldn't get blown up when they launched.
I was surprised to learn the crew actually lived where the rockets were housed.
Do you know how many people used to live in here, like at one time?
524/7 from Cheyenne's F.E. Warren. And over here's the room that the missile was in.
Yeah, the missile was 85 feet long, about 9 foot in diameter. It was stored in a horizontal position. The nose was down here. We have two buildings underground. The launch building, which is about 15,000 square feet. Command building, which is underneath that dirt, which is 5,000 square feet.
139,000 cubic yards of concrete designed to withstand a 1 megaton blast 1.6 miles away, had 4 warheads on it, commissioned at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
We walked downstairs into what was known as the oxygen room.
Down here's a large 60-foot room that they contained a 65-foot stainless steel liquid oxygen tank.
And how far underground are we right now?
Well, the culvert, above the culvert is about 12 feet to the surface.
When I emerged from the tunnel, I plugged in coordinates for an active missile site I'd located not too far away.
It's just crazy how unexposed they are.
I turned off the highway and onto a dirt road. There was a barbed wire fence with a lock gate to my left. Inside the perimeter stood a few metal slabs with poles sticking up.
I do know they're like these permanent 2 sighting things, and there's some kind of cryptic, kind of some directional sorts of stuff. Kind of a creepy thing, actually, that we would have it right at the corner of our place.
As I got out of the pickup, I was approached by the owners of a nearby farmhouse. For the sake of their privacy, I called them Emma and John. It wasn't long before they showed me a cylindrical metal plate buried in their lawn, only a few hundred yards from the missile site.
That was to set up the guidance systems. And the guidance systems on the missiles are designed to go off of true north. And at night, they would go up and get their settings off the North Star, and then that's how they put in the guidance for the missiles.
Seeing something that helped direct a missile right next to a home was odd, but they didn't seem to mind. We paused for a second and looked towards the silo. Before walking around to the back of the farm, I was curious to hear if anybody who lived nearby had spotted the mysterious aircraft flying at night.
Nobody ever sighted them flying over a silo. They were always different places, because most of the military work, the Air Force stuff, is generally done at night, and so you don't see them that much.
Or it's done very visible, and you see like armored. What are those vehicles? Humvees on corners, and you might even see a helicopter in the air, and there'll be a trailer working on the ground. Yeah, at the site. So that's very visible, and you know something's going on.
When the Air Force was asked, they said, "Oh, we don't know nothing." Okay, with all the missile sites, they would have known something.
With the silo near Emma and John's residence housing a nuke that could be launched at any time, I'd wondered if they'd seen an increase in military activity when the strange craft were nearby.
Their regular routines of checking didn't increase.
So that makes you think a little bit. You know, I mean, they the assumption would be they knew something was going on because they weren't being ever vigilant of their property, So they were probably...
And law enforcement generally didn't have much of a clue whether they were told not to say anything or not. But, even the ex-sheriffs and ex-deputies, they speculate the same thing, that it's military. The last, it's maybe been 5 to 7 years, they have surveillance on all the sites. They thought when they started in the 60s that the fences they put around them were pressure sensitive. So if anybody messed with it, they didn't know we had tumbleweeds. And within a month, they had to change their system because there'd be enough tumbleweeds blowing against them and set them off. Supposedly, if you would take a little drone and go fly it over a missile site, somebody might show up and stuff like that. Because I know a gentleman put a pivot in, ran the electric line in, he nicked the communications cable, and it's pressurized. And I think they said 12 minutes there was a chopper there.
That seemed fast, but I knew a lot could happen in 12 minutes. Even with many government agencies publicly denying involvement in the sightings, it did seem probable that old silos and the land surrounding them could be a secure place to operate and store large numbers of drones. If there was a connection between the functioning silos and unknown aircraft, I was confident the Air Force would know what was going on. Chapter 16, F.E. Warren.
Use the right lane to take exit 359C onto I-25 North and US 87 North toward Casper. In 1.2 miles, take exit 10D onto Missile Drive toward Happy Jack Road.
2 military helicopters flying right towards me on the interstate now.
Helicopters flew over as I parked near a guarded gate at F.E. Warren. It's the closest Air Force base to a majority of the sightings and located on the outskirts of Cheyenne, Wyoming. A lieutenant by the name of John Karkuff agreed to an interview with me as a representative for the base. After a few minutes, he arrived to take me to his office.
F.E. Warren originally started out as a cavalry training base. So I think at one point there were 25,000 horses here at F.E. Warren, and we still have some of the stables up on the north end of our base. But it eventually became an intercontinental ballistic missile, an ICBM base.
The base looked like a small town, complete with brick buildings and dirt road streets. Sitting in the passenger seat of his vehicle, I noticed how clean it was, an over-the-top, attention-to-detail type clean. John was definitely a Type A personality.
So when I originally found out about F.E. Warren, I was a little bit mystified. I'd never heard of F.E. Warren, never seen the base pop up on anything. So I was a little bit, inquisitive as to what exactly I was heading into.
What does the 90th Missile Wing do specifically?
Yeah, so the 90th Missile Wing is made up of several groups, and this includes security forces, the missileers, so the actual operators who sit in the missile capsules, as well as the maintainers, the administrative folks, the mission support groups, the force support. So the 90th Missile Wing encompasses all of that. And the 90th Missile Wing is the wing stationed at F.E. Warren that would execute the nuclear mission that ensures that the president and his advisors or her advisors have the capability to call upon nuclear power should it be necessary.
I didn't know how long I'd have to speak with John. I steered our conversation towards the mysterious aircraft. F.E. Warren has denied that these drones belong to them. Would that mean that you wouldn't have to acknowledge if a contractor outside of you was using those drones?
Yeah, so I can confirm that the drone sightings were not related to F.E. Warren or the Air Force in any way. So that would include, contractors or what other, third parties that might be. But they were in no way, shape, or form related to the Air Force.
When it comes to the active missile silos in the area, I assume that there's some type of counter-drone technology that would protect those.
So F.E. Warren does have a counter-drone program. I can't go into too much specifics due to operational security, but I can say that any kind of training that we do on FE Warren takes place within the confines of the base, and in discussions with our forces in the field, we can confirm that those drones were not ours, and at no time did they ever threaten any of our facilities, any of our missiles, any of our missile silos. So that kind of, again, put it definitely made us think about an aspect of how we communicate our programs to the public. It was something that some people, you think of anti-drone technology and you think of ray guns or whatever it is. I can't go into specifics about how all that counter drone stuff works, but it did make us I guess approach the drone issue in a more direct way. I can't speak of when the counter drone stuff was being used or wasn't being used. Although I can say that we did have the technology should we need to employ it. We've had that, but at no point in time did we ever need to employ it during that January timeframe.
John said that the Air Force did have counter-drone technology in place during the first week of 2020, when a majority of the objects were sighted. However, he didn't go into detail about counter-drone surveillance at each individual silo.
I don't think there's a need for concern. I want to stay in my lane here, but I know in terms of the FAA and the other agencies that do serve to protect our community and our neighbors out in Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. I know they are very on the ball in terms of what we are doing and what they are doing and how we work together in order to make sure that our community is safe. So I don't think there's a need for concern.
No need for concern? This was a confusing statement to me. If these unknown aircraft didn't belong to the Air Force, and if John, on behalf of FE Warren, could also conclude no Air Force contractors were flying them, there may be something strange flying in the vicinity of nuclear missiles, and no one could pinpoint what it was.
2.9, Jack FM.
This call is now being recorded.
The first time I interviewed you, I felt like you weren't giving me the full picture and clearest detail of everything you knew. Can you go into more of that now?
Definitely into more of it. But in the one big issue in all of it is, as far as what I can go into and what I can't, the one big one is the FAA-related breaking of rules and laws.
Following my visit to FE Warren, I was able to convince Matthew Spencer to talk with me again.
Do you have any way of proving that you were in Colorado during that time?
Only thing would be the logs from the drones, and that becomes an issue. I mean, that's the thing, and that's kind of why I was offered the polygraph, to avoid having to turn anything in that's going to get me into trouble.
What were you doing in Colorado during the time of the Colorado drone mystery?
The Colorado drone mystery in that exact spot in Spa City was happening is essentially where we thought we were going to be able to catch up with what we were tracking, UAP. We were not. And so as our own process entails, sometimes drones go up to tell us what we need to know if we missed it, and that's what the end of it was. We did come to the conclusion we had missed it, and with what was going on with the Colorado drones, we decided to get on out of town at that time.
Now, is this the same type of craft that the Navy refers to? Is it Tic Tac that we've all seen in those videos online?
Yes, this is the exact same technology. There's a particular version we were looking for, but they all match up the same, and that version is going to be that essentially there is no sign of propulsion. You have the ability to really just float there. Contrary to belief and what you've heard from the various encounters, it does make a noise. It's just not a noise you're going to pick up by flying a fighter jet. It is a slight hum on an ultrasonic mic. It really tells you a lot about what is going on inside of it. And these are the sort of things that we look for. In other words, there's nothing physics-wise that we know of in the inventory that could do these sort of things.
That sounds crazy. What would lead you to believe there was a tic-tac in the vicinity of the Colorado drones?
Most of what you hear and most of the objective being led right now is definitely from an adversary such as China or Russia or its little green men. All of those dictate the story and the narrative, and that narrative would be, it could be coming from overseas or from a ship, it could be coming from the sky, Mars, and it's coming down to us. But when you get into the reality of it, if it is ours, if it is us, then it has to be built somewhere, and it has to be maintained somewhere, and that's going to be in the United States, over land.
What would lead you to believe there was a UAP in the vicinity of the Colorado drones?
I've been at this a long time. You know, the correlation is, yes, do I have drones? Of course. That's a part of it. In certain instances, you know, where we've seen issues with the craft, which is why you usually get a great view of it, drones follow. So if you have something, a hypothetical, a piece could come off, you would have a stall out and you would have drones follow. We believe that that would be the method. And we believe that's probably what's going on with the larger, faster, heavier ones that seem to show up right before we left.
If there was a larger aircraft or some type of UAP in the vicinity of these drone-like objects, I couldn't find any information that would confirm that. Matthew brought up a few of the FAA emails that Douglas Johnson had published online. He had strong words for how his correspondence with the FAA was released. When he said Agent Bumgardner, he was referencing Agent Bumberger.
Michael Bumgarner is a legal hawk. If you look him up, if you research him, he's the guy that goes out to the local little airport where they got Cessnas flying from the 1960s, and he watches and he writes down your tail number and he writes tickets. There's cases of it online you can find. He was sent out to write tickets. He wasn't sent out to solve the mystery. People have to understand, you know, I'm a debunker. Like I said, there were satellites in the area during that time period. There were planets. There's all sorts of stuff in the sky, and I always debunked that, and I believed a lot of it could be debunked. As far as what I think about Bumgarner, is this stuff happens. You know, people always think if we FOIA, like we'll find answers. FOIA's not new. The paper that they released in the communication between Bumgarner to me says at the bottom of it, you can't show anybody this, you can't distribute it, nothing. So they also could keep everything in a file, and the only way that comes out is what they want to pull out of that file. Because if you pull something out of that file yourself, federal charges, federal penalties. So they just happen to release some stuff from FOIA and not the other things. And then you have this narrative, and the narrative, I think, in anyone's opinion, was very negative of me.
I gotta be honest, Matthew, that sounds like it's out there. Why would Bumberger go to so much trouble to throw you under the bus?
There's a narrative, and it's an FAA narrative, and that's that they know everything. They're the feds. I mean, this is the way it works. The story that a UFO or a UAP was in that area is not something they want to deal with. Now, you're the special agent in charge. That was his title of this. It's on you. And he sure in heck wasn't going to let anything out that wasn't normal. Did you see one? Did you think he's right? Or do you think he should have took the guy that wanted to take a polygraph, come up there and answer some questions? He didn't want that polygraph on record.
It wasn't my job to judge or not judge an FAA narrative. I was missing key facts. There was another person who could possibly shed new light on the FAA's response. It was a man I'd been trying to interview since day one, as the obscure sightings seemed to begin in his county, Phillips County, Colorado. Sheriff Tom Elliott, finally agreed to speak with me.
In early January, a task force meeting was held in Brush to discuss the sightings. Did you take part in this meeting, and what did you learn from it?
I was there, and all we got was lip service from the Federal Aviation Administration, and those are the people that actually regulate these drones. What we found out is the FAA has no enforcement arm, so their capabilities to enforce their own rules is zero.
Now, Phillips County Sheriff's Office posted on Facebook on January 6th, a strategy meeting was held today in Brush, Colorado with federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies regarding the drones. Specifically, we are looking for the command vehicle. We are looking for a closed box trailer with antennas or large van does not belong in the area. If you see anything that resembles that or this description, please call the Phillips County Sheriff's Office. Were you ever, in fact, looking for that specific vehicle, or was that based on what was talked about at that task force meeting?
You asked two different questions there. So the question about how did we come to a description of the vehicle came from the FAA from that task force meeting. And that's the description of the vehicle that they said they were looking for. They said at the meeting, quit looking for the drones, start looking for the command vehicle. And this is what you should be looking for. The second part of your question is, that's the description of the vehicle. Yes, that is what we were looking for.
Has there been any follow-up from that task force meeting, to the best of your knowledge?
There was never even a task force formed. At the meeting, there was one, Sheriff Martin took names, but no task force was actually formed. So therefore, no task force was never got off the ground to investigate this. This all falls back on the federal government, who refused to do anything. This is a federal law violation, and they should have done something about the federal law violation.
Fingers were pointing at the FAA. It later came to my attention that Logan County Sheriff Dave Martin not only took names as mentioned by Sheriff Elliott, but was said to be the head of the drone task force. He didn't want to be recorded, but told me there were no steps ever taken to form the group. FAA officials left the meeting saying they'd share information. But as I learned, there was no follow-up. Was it the FAA's job to be the glue that brought this together? But more importantly, were there details FAA investigators purposely kept from collaborating agencies? I soon became aware of disturbing information, which led me to research an area outside of Phoenix, Arizona.
Palo Verde generates the most energy of any power-producing facility in the nation. It's also the largest nuclear plant with 3 units.
Something happened in the skies above the Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station, one of America's most powerful nuclear plants. On consecutive nights in September of 2019, 2 months before the Northeast Colorado sightings, unauthorized drones were spotted flying over a restricted area with pressurized water reactors. These were described as large aircraft with red and white flashing lights. They appeared at night, and it was reported that they had spotlights on while approaching the site, but turned them off after entering the security owner-controlled area. No drone operators were found, and witnesses were left scratching their heads. This discovery led me to uncover something else, an alarming trend the FAA knew of that would completely change my view of the mystery. Coming up on Obscurum, Invasion of the Drones.
They kind of stopped at that two-way stop sign, and it stopped moving and then elevated, and then it lowered itself behind a tree.
I'm anxious, but I can't worry about what might happen or the consequences of revealing the truth.
It started to go up slowly, but it kept doing it for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. This thing ended up being thousands of feet in the air.
We want to hear from you. If you have any information surrounding the events detailed in this podcast or other obscure stories in rural America we should look into, please visit our website at obscurumseries.com and send us an email. To connect with us on social media, you can follow at obscurum_series and at Gabe Lenners on all social platforms. Obscurum is produced by Imagine and Lenners Entertainment for iHeartMedia. This series is written, hosted, and produced by me, Gabe Lenners. It's executive produced by Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, Carl Welker, Nathan Clokey, Nikki Etour, and me. Additional production by Jacob Plew. Music and sound effects courtesy of Epidemic Sound. Brand management and digital design by Labyrinth Brand Co. Video editing by Alex Semikopenko. This project was mixed and mastered by Jacob Plew. Special thanks to Dan Bodansky, Josh Hiller, Keaton Stortz, Bryson Keyes, Ailey Birchfield, David Wasserman, Katrina Norvell, and my family. Obscurum Invasion of the Drones is available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Follow now.
Welcome to the Criminalia podcast. I'm Maria Tremarchi.
And I'm Holly Fry. Together, we invite you into the dark and winding corridors of historical true crime.
Each season, we explore a new theme, from poisoners to art thieves.
We uncover the secrets of history's most interesting figures, from legal injustices to body snatching.
And tune in at the end of each episode as we indulge in cocktails and mocktails inspired by each story.
Listen to Criminalia on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Dressing.
Oh, French dressing.
Exactly.
Oh, that's good.
I'm AJ Jacobs, and my current obsession is puzzles. And that has given birth to my podcast, The Puzzler.
Something about Mary Poppins?
Exactly.
This is fun.
You can get your daily puzzle nuggets delivered straight to your ears. Listen to The Puzzler every day on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It was big news. I mean, white girl gets murdered, found in a cemetery. Big news.
A long investigation stalls until someone changes their story.
I saw the whole thing that happened.
An arrest, trial, and conviction soon follow.
He did not kill her. There's no way.
Is the real killer rightly behind bars or still walking free?
Did you kill her?
Listen to The Real Killer, Season 3, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Mark Seal.
And I'm Nathan King.
This is Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli.
The 5 families did not want us to shoot that picture.
This podcast is based on my co-host Mark Seal's best-selling book of the same title. Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli features new and archival interviews with Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Evans, James Caan, Talia Shire, and many others.
Yes, that was a real horse's head.
Listen and subscribe to Leave the Gun, Take the Cannoli on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.